Hey, welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I am your host, Jason Osborne. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned that we can learn from them as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and get sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. It's Jason A. Osborne, and the link will be in the show notes below. On today's show, we have our special guest, Alastair Wallace. He is the owner of Brain Food Limited, providing leadership and communications training. So it's great to have you on the show, Alastair. And I want to start off with asking a question that I always start off asking. And the question is this: if you had a time machine and you were able to travel back to when you started either Brain Food Limited or maybe another company previously, brand new in business, maybe a little bit naive in what you thought was possible, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you'd give your younger self that maybe would have stopped you from dealing with some unnecessary challenges or heartaches along the way in growing your business?
So I never thought I'd be saying this, but I think the key to that question, for me certainly anyway, is that it's okay to experiment, and experiments sometimes go wrong. I mean, one of the overriding fears for most people and leaders, particularly, I think, is fear of failure.
Yeah.
So when you're first setting out in a business, it's inevitable there's going to be some failures. You're going to get things wrong. It's not going to go right first time. So experimentation, I think, is really important in the early stages of a business, and not to expect that it's going to be correct first time. To learn from other people, to learn from those mistakes. And when you do find something that works, really focusing on consistency. Because I think in the initial stages of a business, everything seems super exciting. You're being pulled in lots of different directions. If you are an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, you have to wear a lot of different hats as well. You suddenly have to be an accountant, and you have to be a strategist, and you have to, deliver your service. You have to be a marketeer. And that can be quite exhausting. And nobody, I don't think, that I've ever met is naturally good at all of those things from the get-go. So I think if I was to think about that one lesson to say to myself, it would be experimentation is okay. Don't worry if it goes wrong, as long as you learn from those mistakes and be consistent with the things that do work. Consistency is really the most difficult one that I find even now. I set up my business in 2009, but there are still things I think that I would improve from developing better consistency with. And that's a good opportunity to get help from other people.
Yeah. So from here, what you're saying, one, don't be afraid to experiment, but stay consistent as well and not be jumping around from things, which almost, like, I understand where you're coming from, but some people might go, well, that almost sounds contradictory. It's like stay consistent, but be willing to experiment. So I know what you mean by that, but can you expound on that? With because it does seem contradictory for some people.
Sure. So in the initial stages, I think experiment and don't be afraid of experimenting. I think that's really the point I'm trying to make there. I was really worried about getting things wrong. So it's okay to experiment, particularly in the initial stages, but even now, in an established business. But once you find those things that do work, it's staying consistent with those things. That's really the key, I think, to making it successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. When it comes to the experiment side of it, what I'm kind of reading in between the lines there is that oftentimes there's that either fear of failure or the perfectionism kicks in. What do you advise people, or what have you found that just helps in that area as well?
So I think some of us have that gene naturally a bit more strongly than others. I know that I have that, and maybe that's why I struggled in the initial stages about that need for perfection. So I think really the key to overcoming that is being very clear about what the potential consequences are, and being really realistic about that. Like, how dangerous is this if it doesn't go well? What's the risk? What's the potential payoff? So it's almost gaining control of that internal voice, that fearful voice inside you, and being very clear about realistically what are the risks here, what are the potential benefits here, and how long am I going to try this for? So it's really about having a plan for these things, because there's only one of you if you're an entrepreneur, so your time is limited. You don't want to be working all the hours God sends. We've all fallen into that trap as well, and we know that doesn't lead somewhere. So having a really clear, demarcated plan where you're going to spend your time, where you're going to dedicate your energy, I think is really important, for all leaders, but particularly in those initial stages where you do feel a bit scattered and pulled in lots of different directions.
Yeah. Moving on from that, that's the initial stages. Once you get a bit more established, and I know you talked a bit, around the consistency once you find things that work with things, but what are some of the biggest challenges you find, or that you've even personally dealt with once you start getting a little bit more established, that you had to rethink the way you approach things?
Okay. That's a really easy question to answer, I think. Stop trying to do everything yourself. So you have to take some of those hats off and give them to other people. It's perfectly possible to learn to be an accountant for your own business, to be a marketeer for your business, to look at your social media, build your own website. But all of those things take time. So it's really about leaning into your area of genius, your specialism, your expertise, the parts of your job that you really enjoy and that you're really good at, and the parts that are going to make you money, the reason you're doing this, and look at how you can delegate some of those other things to other people. For a long time, I think I tried to do as much as possible myself. And you have to learn to build that trust in other people, to delegate tasks to them confidently and allow them to lean into their area of expertise and to help you develop and grow your business. You need to spend time serving your customers, giving them the things that they need, the product or the service that they need, rather than wasting time counting receipts, designing websites and all of that stuff. So it's kind of letting go of that inner control freak, I think, and pulling other people in to help you. The gig economy that we have now, I think really, really helps us to do that. So you don't need to employ people. I don't employ anyone within my business, but I do use contractors and freelancers for discrete pieces of work to help me deliver client work, for accounting, for example, for marketing, sales, web design, building online courses, all of that sort of stuff, which I could learn, and I have learned some of it, but it's never going to be my area of expertise. So really being strict with yourself about how you spend your time and how you focus on your expertise and your zone of genius.
Yeah, it's such a great point you're making there. With the leadership and communications training that you're doing with that, kind of following on with that, letting go, I know, is a big issue for people, because when you do start off, you do things your way. You've got a certain system or routine, the way you do it. You have a certain thought process. But obviously, when you start to delegate or outsource these things, I mean, like you said, the whole gig economy. I don't have any employees in my business as well. I have contractors and outsource as well. What's some advice on letting go and realizing that something may not be done exactly the way you want it, but sometimes that's actually a good thing, because sometimes people can even do it better, or even if they don't do better, at what point is it okay to not have it exactly the way you want it, but it's done enough so that you can focus on your zone of genius that you're talking about?
So I learned a really good expression from my web designer and online course specialist, Jeanette. And she always says, done is better than perfect. which I just absolutely love, Jason. I can hear her voice ringing in my ears when I'm procrastinating about something. So done is always better than perfect. So it doesn't have to be perfect first time. And also, as you say, if you're giving something to an expert, so for example, Jeanette produced my flagship digital training program, How to Lead Your Team. So I had produced all the content, recorded the videos, done the learning piece, if you like. But in terms of getting it into the software platform, making it look good, thinking about the user experience, that's just not my area of expertise. And so, she said to me, you can do it yourself, and it's probably going to take you this long, or I can do it for you. And, that for me was a no-brainer. So thinking about, is the amount of time that I would need to dedicate to this a good spend of my time, learning how to use Kajabi, for example, and uploading all of these videos and, doing all the necessary IT stuff behind the scenes. Is it worth my time doing that? And the answer was a very simple no in that situation. Now, I speak to lots of managers, probably 50 a week on various training courses, and delegation is one of the biggest barriers. I think sometimes people have a lot. So it's about trusting someone else to do something. As you say, it's not going to be done exactly the same way that you would do it. Then you run the risk of micromanaging somebody. But giving people things that allow them to lean into their skills and their expertise. So getting the selection of person right, being really clear about what you want, why it's important, and thinking about that sliding scale of stretch as well. If I'm delegating to somebody, how far is this pulling them out of their comfort zone, or is this firmly within their comfort zone? Because if it is, then I don't need to give, lots and lots of information and structure and details and context. I can, think about allowing them to add those things in themselves to get better results.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so true. Like all this stuff I've had to learn, and each time I grow my business, I have to learn it more. And it's a constant evolution, and it's something that I hear from clients all the time as well. So yeah, love your perspective on it. And I totally agree as well. Like that done is better than perfect. Because I think we overthink it, and even if we think it's perfect, as soon as it's launched, we're going to find out that the users want something else, or that this needs to be updated. So might as well just get it out there, and we can always improve along the way.
Yeah, exactly. Iteration is the way forward with all of these sorts of things, because, with the advent of technology and artificial intelligence and, the way that people's expectations change as well, particularly in work, we're going to need to keep evolving with that. So it's not a case of one and done with any of these things. As you say, it's something that's going to be a continual evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, I've just looked down at the time, and we're pretty much up at the 15 minutes, which always blows my mind how fast these things
it goes quick.
It does. It's just because it's great information you're sharing. But for anyone that wants a bit more information about how to find you, what's the best way for people to find you?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Alastair Wallace, Alastair Alastair, because there's 100 different ways to spell it. So you can find me on there, or you can find me at brainfooduk.com. So currently being rebuilt at the moment by Jeanette. So should be ready in the next 2 weeks. But, that's the best way to find me.
Amazing. Well, thanks for being on the show, Alastair. And as a reminder, the show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. It's Jason A. Osborne on LinkedIn, and it'll be in the show notes below as well. So until next time, have an incredible day. Chat to you later.